Every time I watch videos of people like Colttaine, Barbarosa, and Turd Flinging Monkey, I often see people comment on their videos, and they often express high admiration of their knowledge, and they often ask what kind of books they read or what kind of resources they read. And arguably, these people are very intelligent, I think. So that's one reason why they are so knowledgeable, and general knowledge tends to correlate with IQ. Although it's not a solid predictor or as solid as a test, it does correlate. So it is not far-fetched to say that these people are very smart. And this is the topic that I want to discuss today. That is, these types of people are one type of person that I can respect is one that I would refer to as an intellectual titan. I'm not talking about mainstream intellectuals, although some are befitting of the title. I'm simply speaking about some very knowledgeable individuals on YouTube, or for that matter anywhere else. So people like Turd Flinging Monkey, Colttaine and Barbarosa and many more that I'm not remembering right now, or as I would refer to them as intellectual titans. And this is the topic I want to address today. And it's basically a plan on how to become an intellectual titan. The intellectual titan has the following characteristics: verbal fluency, a large vocabulary, excellent use of linguistic syntax, ability to elucidate concepts, high crystallized intelligence, ability to relate concepts, in essence connecting the dots, and radical objectivity. When you listen to these individuals, you recognize quality. However, quality is a tricky subject matter. Robert Pirsig, a brilliant individual that wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, states that quality, or value, or whatever you want to call it, cannot be defined because it empirically precedes any intellectual construction of it, namely due to the fact that quality exists always as a perceptual experience before it is ever thought of descriptively or academically. Meaning that attempting to define the characteristics of quality in a retrospective manner is fruitless. However, it does not stop us from trying to do so. One reason quality is hard to describe is that it is an emergent property out of smaller elements. It is one thing, but also multiple things. A heart is one thing, but it is also an epiphenomenon of cells. In any case, one thing you have to know about the intellectual titan is that they basically have a shitload of knowledge, and because of that they are able to make interesting and novel connections between different domains of knowledge. So, with this in mind, I would like to propose a plan for becoming an intellectual titan. And I know that this will only be appealing to specific types of individuals, usually with a pretty high IQ. For such individuals, this as a goal, that is, becoming an intellectual titan, will come naturally and intuitively. One important reason is, as Alan Watts states, for me, being literate and articulate is a form of judo, of overcoming the system by its own methods. This is a quote from Alan Watts. In this sense, becoming an intellectual titan is a form of weaponizing the intellect to defend yourself against the brainwashing, ignorance and incompetence of society. And most importantly, to understand. Marie Curie stated, "Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood." To give an example, let's look at Elon Musk objectively. He has so many dreams and goals, yet he hasn't accomplished any of them. Why? Because he isn't focusing on one goal, and then the next goal. He's diverging his attention in multiple directions. Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company, Neuralink, and as of late, cryptocurrency. On top of that, he's a complete beta cuck, experiencing bouts of depression, bouts of long-lasting depression after his girlfriend left him, resulting in the inability to focus on his life missions. If you have seen Elon Musk on Joe Rogan's podcast, there was a sense of inner turmoil. He seemed very stressed out. No doubt that Elon Musk is a smart guy. However, he's not an intellectual titan, he's a beta nerd. Contrast him to Christopher Hitchens, who is indeed an intellectual titan, that is, intelligent and being able to brute force through bullshit by proxy of his weaponized intelligence. By giving this example, I am trying to illustrate the importance of being an intellectual titan. A man that has the genetic potential of Elon Musk being incapacitated by something as mediocre as a breakup is ludicrous, to say the least. His sense of self-worth is derived from a woman rather than his overall achievement. Let's continue on the subject matter of becoming an intellectual titan. It is true that a great painter is often born rather than made. However, that latent capacity needs to be channeled through technique, discipline, and learning. Being tall does not necessarily mean that you know all about basketball. However, it does mean that you could. It is in this spirit that I am attempting to share my ideas. One thing you have to keep in mind is that the intellectual titan is an ideal or a value, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Look, I'm not an idealistic person, but ideals are good inner guides. They give us direction in life, even the unattainable ideals. It doesn't matter that the whole of the ideal cannot be attained. What matters is that a part of it can be attained, and how much part of that whole is dependent on the individual's latent capacity. An ideal is nothing more than the attraction force of the compass of your life. Absorbing knowledge lies at the foundation of becoming an intellectual titan. There is no necessary inherent order in the recipe I'm about to share. So, as I was writing this, there are a lot of elements pertaining to becoming an intellectual titan, and one of them is verbal fluency. And as I was writing this, I wrote a lot more than I thought I would. So this video will mainly focus on verbal fluency, but there are many more other subject matters that I want to address into the road of becoming an intellectual titan. Such subject matter as understanding the scientific method, or what kinds or what kind of subject matters to study. But let's dive into verbal fluency. One very important thing about becoming an intellectual titan is verbal fluency. Verbal fluency, as measured by an IQ test, is the speed by which you recall words. For example, on an IQ test, a psychometrician will ask you to recall as many words that start with the letter P, or as many words related to a specific linguistic category, such as fruits, animals, or politics. Then they will look at how many words you have recalled in a certain amount of time and compare that to other individuals, and thus deduce your strength in verbal fluency relative to other people. Verbal fluency is a fundamental skill. Fundamental skills are the building blocks of complexity. It doesn't matter how much imagination, creativity, or intelligence you have. Without fundamental skills, you cannot achieve much. For example, to produce the marvelous visions and images you see in your mind on a piece of paper, you need the fundamental painting skills, that is, perspective, lighting, and anatomy. To give an example, by understanding anatomy, you will be able to draw characters and even break the rules of anatomy to draw fascinating looking shapes. which you will often observe in cartoons. Verbal fluency. Verbal fluency is not necessarily a vocabulary test, since it is more about the speed by which you recall words. However, having an exotic vocabulary will help. Vocabulary has a 0.7 to 0.8 correlation with the latent G factor of an IQ test. Moreover, vocabulary has a correlation with high general knowledge. This is in a sense obvious, since learning a subject is in essence about understanding semantic primitives pertaining to the subject at hand. Think of it as this. If you learn about computer science, you will also learn new terminology and thus indirectly increase your vocabulary. In this sense, to increase vocabulary is an easy task from a conceptual point of view, but might require effort from a physical point of view. Basically, you have to read a lot. Reading a lot increases vocabulary, as simple as that. However, it does require time, effort and energy. One strategy is to literally read dictionaries. For some individuals this might work, for others not so. This all depends on how your mind is wired from a neurological point of view. Personally, I recommend dictionaries and books. For me, English is not my first language. It is actually my third language, so I have still a long way to go. But my strategy for now will be reading a list of 100 short novels I found online. The article is titled How to Be Well Read in No Time. I will put a link into the description or the comment section. Point is, these novels are very short, about 200 to 250 pages. In essence, you could finish one in one day or two. Now, verbal fluency is also about conscious learning. Conscious learning trumps any form of learning, that is, learning with deliberate intent. This means that every time you find a new word that you don't know, although tempting, do not only try to intuitively deduce its meaning from the context and then move on. Also try to actually look up the new word on Google or the dictionary. Plato said knowledge which is acquired under compulsion has no hold on the mind. By increasing your mental hard drive of definitions, you will become better at articulating your thoughts, and you will become better at constructing novel compositions of sentences. The next thing you might want to do is to learn to write down your thoughts. Christopher Hitchens said, if you can speak, you can write. If you can write, you can speak. It is important to learn to write down your thoughts, because you will learn to refine them. The next thing, after having constructed a habit of writing down your thoughts, you want to move on to articulating your thoughts through speech. You could start by simply recording your thoughts in a freestyle manner on your smartphone. Nowadays, all smartphones have an inbuilt recording app, so there is no excuse. In essence, what I am doing here right now. After having become more comfortable with this, you want to work on a standard structure you can use. You do this by combining writing and speaking. That is to say, have a list of written subject matters you want to address, but don't use too much detail. Try to fill in the details by speaking your mind, rather than becoming overly reliant on notes. Slowly try to eliminate all verbal impurities, such as common interjections, especially the dreaded sounds. This will be no easy task if you're an introvert, since introverts tend to speak slowly because they like to think things through, and I assume that most people that are of an intellectual nature are usually introverts. That isn't to say all, but most. One thing to keep in mind is that silence is much better than an sound. Give yourself the necessary time to collect your thoughts. This is doable, even if you're a slow-speaking introvert. Think of Demosthenes, that was born with a crippling speech impediment and worked hard to overcome the incredible odds to become ancient Greece's most respected orator. Demosthenes actually went as far as stuffing his mouth full of stones to force himself to articulate words properly. The next step is to actually share your thoughts. This can be done by YouTube videos, such as this one that I'm making right now. You can start by writing and simply recording yourself reading your ideas and insights. However, eventually you will want to stop relying on writing to aid you in speaking. This is simple, but again it requires energy and effort. We have to absorb a lot of knowledge on everything and anything. Jordan Peterson once said, if you want to speak fluently, for example about psychology, you have to know 75% more than you actually express. In essence, an abundance of knowledge to draw upon. That is one of the keys to verbal fluency. The next thing you might want to do is record your thoughts as you are walking among people. For example, talking about a philosophical topic when you're walking in a mall with lots of people around you. Understand that no one actually gives a fuck about what you're doing. It might seem so because of social fear and delusions of the mind, but understand that you eventually have to use your weaponized intellect publicly. That is, if you want to amount to something in life. Aristotle said, or I'm not sure if he said this, but it is often attributed to Aristotle, to avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. Usually this quote is regarded as solid advice by New Age woo-woo people. However, what they don't understand is that this advice is on what not to do and not on what to do. Learning how to freely speak your mind without being stifled by the opinions of others is of great importance. The more you worry, the less space you have in your working memory to precisely articulate your thoughts. Verbal fluency is important. When it comes to verbal fluency, working memory is important, which brings me to my next topic. In the end, verbal fluency is about how effective your brain is from a psychological point of view, efficient neurological wiring, and how the brain deals with metabolic artifacts are all crucial aspects of verbal fluency. This can be summarized as simply having a high intelligence. However, there are things that can impede the manifestations of your genetic potential. To give an example, if you haven't slept properly, you will function at a lower intellectual level compared to your baseline. Therefore, it is crucial to understand the various types of behavior patterns that reduce working memory. One of such patterns is constant rumination, worrying and anxiety. We want to eliminate all unnecessary cognitive noise. Cognitive noise is usually created by the ego itself, that is, you yourself. Cognitive noise often happens when you are experiencing cognitive dissonance in regards to how you are right now and your ideal self. One thing you have to understand about your neurological mechanisms is that they are impartial. The prefrontal cortex is the brain part that regulates impulse. For example, it says that you shouldn't lie. However, if you have chosen to lie, the prefrontal cortex is at the same time the brain part that helps you come up with the best lie possible. The point I'm making is that when you're constantly beating yourself up about a certain habit you want to give up, you will generate cognitive noise and therefore reduce verbal fluency. You have to either suck it up and give up the habit, or simply accept it as it is and move on. Christopher Hitchens is an example of someone who has accepted and moved on, although this did result in him getting cancer. For example, if you're a smoker, you either accept you are one or you suck it up and quit smoking. If you don't, this topic will repeatedly keep manifesting itself in your mind over and over again, and thus reduce verbal fluency by unnecessarily loading your working memory with cognitive noise. This is actually one reason why depressed people tend to slur when they speak. That is because they constantly ruminate on negative thoughts. And I have nothing against negativity or negative thoughts. I think it is the default position of the human nature. I am not making a value judgment here. I am well aware about the neurology of depression. I'm merely trying to make a point. And the last but not least, you want to stop watching porn. Porn is a trivial activity and often displayed by average people. And I don't think it is an activity befitting of the MGTOW, man going their own way philosophy, because you're still attached to, you're still a slave to your biology. You're basically an animal. And we are an animal, but we are also a human. The human within the animal. Porn is an artificial superstimuli, meaning that it will produce abnormal spikes of dopaminergic activity. These result in your brain adjusting to these spikes by reducing dopamine receptors. Consequently, this will result in less motivation and energy in your day-to-day life. But it will also result in lower verbal fluency. Dopamine is a crucial neurotransmitter that sends signals to other nerve cells. In a sense, you can metaphorically regard dopamine as the electricity of your physiological activity. Without it, there is no light. With this, you should have enough to work towards the goal of becoming an intellectual titan. However, like I said in the beginning, there is much more to be said, and I will make more videos addressing specific parts of what it means to become an intellectual titan. This video was specifically on verbal fluency. I hope you have gotten something out of this. And remember, good decisions are nutrients for the mind.